Don't feel badly, people confuse them with club studies all the time. Thank you for having me here today. It's a humbling honor to be standing on this stage at Royce Hall, a stage that's been graced by Albert Einstein, John F. Kennedy, and Frank Sinatra.
Woo!
If you listen carefully enough, you can actually hear the stage laughing at me. It's doing wonders for my nerves. An experienced public speaker gave me a tip about delivering this speech today. He said, whatever you do, don't talk about money, religion, or politics. I thought that was really good advice. So I'd like to begin with a story about a wealthy and devout Republican. He lived in a beautiful house right along the river. One day the river overflowed and the village began to flood. The man went up to his roof to seek refuge. A neighbor came by in a boat and yelled, "Get in, wealthy and devout Republican." The wealthy and devout Republican, let's just call him Tom, okay? Tom replied, "No. God will save me. I'm just waiting for a sign." A few hours later, the water was up to Tom's waist. Another neighbor came by in an even bigger boat. "Get in," he said, "or you'll drown." "No," Tom replied again. "I have faith in God. God will save me. I'm just waiting for a sign." A few hours after that, as the sun began to set and the water reached Tom's chin, a helicopter appeared overhead. The ladder dropped down, but Tom waved it away. He yelled towards the sky, "God will save me. I'm just waiting for a sign." The next morning, Tom woke up in heaven. He marched over to the administration building, stormed into God's office, even though God didn't have office hours that day. And Tom got right up in God's face. He said, "God, WTF? My whole life, I was given the same advice over and over. I was told that if I lived righteously and sang your praises, that you would save me. So why didn't you send me a sign?" God looked at Tom, bewildered, and replied, "Send you a sign? I sent you my Navy and my Air Force. What the hell are you doing here?" That's actually a true story. What's the point of it? Well, I think there are a few points. Number one, if you're going to live by the river, my friends, invest in some watercraft. Speedboat, a dinghy, a boogie board, something. Number two, always be nice to your neighbors, especially if you didn't care for point number one. Number three, good advice can save you or it can kill you. It all depends on how you use it. Tom spent so much time looking for the signs that he ended up missing the boat. Notably, Tom graduated from USC. More on that soon, I promise. I'd like to share with you a brief recap of my journey so far. From 15 years ago, when I sat where you're sitting now, actually we didn't incur off on this. To today, standing up here, sweating like only a nervous Jewish writer can, while trying to look self-confident. Marty talked a little bit about me rejecting the conventional wisdom, and now I'll tell you about a few instances in which I tried to accept it. When I was a sophomore, every smart person I knew told me that if I wanted to make TV for a living, I needed to go to the undergraduate film school. I don't know what the admissions formula is at Belknap today, but back then, thousands of students applied from around the world, and the school accepted 15 of them. That's right, 15. My chances of getting into the program were only slightly better than our chances at national football team. Sorry. I gotta tell you, it's a huge basketball fan. I spent most of that year just working on the application. I finally submitted it, and a few weeks later, I got some incredibly good news. I had been rejected. I didn't know at the time that it was good news, but not being admitted to that program, which I applied to based on the good advice I had gotten, was the best thing that ever happened to me in college. Well, academically, at least. I applied to Comm Studies. I got in, which was very fortunate, because the Comm Studies program was where I really began to learn the value and the danger of good advice. I was advised to take Comm 185, the field studies class, so that I could put an internship on my resume. It doesn't matter where you work, any internship will do, people say. So I got a position on Sunset Beach, a brand new daytime soap opera on NBC. You guys look like you never heard of it.
Yeah.
It speaks very highly of it. Now look around. In a genre where most shows were around for decades, Sunset Beach was canceled before I could even get them to sign my consent form. So my resume was off to the races. Who'd be able to resist hiring a film school reject with 3 solid weeks of work experience on a failed daytime soap that had been watched religiously by dozens of people? But there was a silver lining. In the short time I spent there, I met some really interesting people I still know today. And that made me realize that an internship was about far more than what looks on a resume. So every subsequent quarter I spent at UCLA, I took home 185. I accumulated a total of 8 internships. Marty started to mistake me for one of the pieces of rotting furniture in her humanities hall classroom. My parents didn't understand how people could work that much without actually being paid. My parents had assumed to be struggling writer around it being excellent preparation. But taking Com 185 over and over again had its benefits. Marty became a mentor to me. I continued to meet people who taught me about the industry, people who became part of my professional network, people who became my friends. And most of all, I really dug the basketball thing. There's nothing more satisfying than bringing home a pity. When I graduated, it was the spring of 1998, and the internet was exploding to life. Startups and dot-coms were popping up everywhere. It was like nothing the American economy had seen since the Industrial Revolution. The good advice I got was to go work for one of those dot-coms. It didn't matter which one they said, anyone will do. That's how I felt. So I got a job at a streaming media company that was started by the maverick founders of one of the very first internet service providers. The dot-com was backed by huge investments from Microsoft, Dell, Ford, Pepsi, and others. 6 months later, the company was bankrupt. And those maverick founders I mentioned, yeah, they were under federal indictment. Why? Glad you asked. They were accused of using the internet to lure underage children across the country, and then using drugs and guns to coerce them into unsavory acts.
Oh my God.
And I assure you, the FBI thought way more highly of them than their investors did. At its height, the company was wasting more money than a parent sending their child to USC. By the way, I barely met the founders, almost never saw them, and was in no way party to or aware of any of the aforementioned founders. Sorry, my lawyer gave me for that one. But like the internships, this job had some upside too. The guy I worked directly for was a highly respected TV executive who the founders had somehow lured to the company without using drugs or guns. He became a mentor to me too, and he told me that if I wanted to end up in charge of TV shows, I needed to write my way there. So he said, go, be a writer. The suggestion sounded suspiciously like more good advice. And at that point, I was feeling a little battered from all the good advice I'd gotten so far in my very short career. But I knew there was at least a kernel of truth in this suggestion, so I embraced it. And my life changed dramatically. I left the company to be a writer, and I spent the next 8 years suffering from severe unemployment. The kind of unemployment that makes you afraid to leave your apartment because you're not sure you'll get back in it. The kind of unemployment that turns your parents from supportive to concerned. The kind of unemployment just between you and me that makes you go back to the UCLA dorms and ask the dining halls if they offer a alumni discount. 7.5 years later, after a few odd little writing jobs here and there, I finally started to gain some traction with my scripts. So people at NBC gave me the good advice to write something topical and relevant. So I wrote a pilot about the U.S.-Mexico border crisis. I showed it to NBC and they said, we love it. It's just way too topical and relevant. But they gave me a shot to come back in with something else. Their new advice was to write something dark and paranoid. So I put together a pitch for a conspiracy thriller. You'll never guess what NBC said about it. That's right. We love it, it's just way too dark and paranoid. They invited me back to try yet again. So I said to NBC, hey, NBC, I have a crazy idea. Why don't you guys just tell me what to pitch you? And at long last, they got specific. Their final advice was to bring them a medical show with a twist. Pause for dramatic effect. So a few weeks later, I came back and pitched them an idea about a concierge doctor working in the Hamptons making house calls to the rich and famous. NBC's response? They loved it. But left pretty speechless by that airtight logical argument. More than that, it's hard to understand how NBC could have given me so much bad advice about what to pitch to NBC. So I said to NBC the only appropriate thing I can imagine saying in that moment. I said, NBC, it's my ass. The next day, I pitched that medical show USA Network and they bought it, which ended up being just as fortuitous for me as getting into comm studies instead of film school. And that more or less brings us to where we are today. Me standing up here and you guys sitting down there, wondering what kind of sociopathic commencement speech this is. Why is this prematurely gray, deeply bitter young man giving us advice, not taking advice? Great question. Here's why. Never in the history of mankind has advice been so prevalent, so available, and so forced down our throats. Everyone has words of wisdom these days, and everyone has a platform from which to broadcast these words to the entire world. That makes this a very empowering and very confusing time to be graduate. If this were 15 years ago, you'd go to sleep tonight, having to only ponder the advice you got from me, your family, your professors, and maybe your loudmouth roommate who likes to get condescending after a few boxes away. But tonight, your mind is drowning in 100 encouraging and cautionary voices. You've probably been on YouTube watching the speech that Oprah just gave at Harvard, the one that President Obama gave at Morehouse, the one that Jeff Hoffman, the founder of Priceline.com, gave at Bradley. By the way, Mr. Hoffman was invited to speak at USC, but he didn't know what he could possibly say to a bunch of kids who never shopped for a bargain in their entire lives. You've surely also gotten hundreds or thousands of Facebook posts, tweets, and Instagrams from friends, acquaintances, strangers, and multiple Kardashians, telling you what they know to be the secret to postgraduate success. Sometimes all at 140 characters or less. Very impressive. I couldn't get this thing down to one character under 13,880. The point is that's a lot of voices and a lot of advice. So, whose voice do you listen to? That's easy. Listen to mine. Because my advice, in a nutshell, is this. Today is the day you start listening to yourselves. You guys have spent 4 years at one of the finest schools on the planet. Maybe 5 years, or even 6. If your blood alcohol level was higher than your GPA. You know more than you think you know. You know yourself better than anyone else knows you. And anything else you need to know, you'll learn from your experiences and, more importantly, from your mistakes. There's no manual for what you're about to do. No singular right way, or singular wrong way to go about it. The advice people will give you is based on the road that they have traveled. But no two of you in this room will travel the same road when you walk out here today. That's what makes tomorrow so scary and so exciting for everyone here. The journey truly is the destination. If you're lucky, you'll come to a crossroads time and again, and you'll have the luxury of options. When that happens, look for the signs if you believe in them. They're far more important. Follow your instincts. Make your own decisions. And once you've made them, it's your responsibility to make sure that they become the right decisions. Through hard work, an open mind, human connection, more hard work, and lots of patience. Having said all that, if your house is flooding and someone offers you a boat, don't be a jackass, take them up.